This video was supposed to come out yesterday because obviously the trade happened yesterday, but thank you, Rogers. Anyways, Toronto FC acquire Mark-Anthony Kaye from the Colorado Rapids in exchange for about $1 million in allocation money, Ralph Priso, a 2023 MLS SuperDraft first-round pick, and an international roster spot for 2023. Now, that is a lot to give up for Mark-Anthony Kaye. Mark-Anthony Kaye is one of the better midfielders in Canada at the moment. Probably on the national team, he's number 4 behind Osorio, Estacio, and Hutchinson. So he is one of the best players in Canada and is going to be going to the World Cup in Qatar with the Canadian national team come November, joining Jonathan Osorio. So now Toronto FC has 2 of the core 4 midfielders for that Canada midfield. And obviously for right now, this is a huge boost to this TFC team. Shore up a huge issue, which is the midfield, bringing in Mark-Anthony Kaye, who's a very versatile player in the midfield, bringing Mark-Anthony Kaye back to play with Bob Bradley. Of course, Bob Bradley with LAFC is the coach that made Mark-Anthony Kaye a true player at MLS and built Mark-Anthony Kaye and helped coach Mark-Anthony Kaye into being a very successful player, an important player for the Canadian national team. And Mark-Anthony Kaye plays at his best under Bob Bradley. He was a little weaker with the Rapids than he was with LAFC. Coming back to Bob Bradley should boost him back up to his LAFC form. So for right now, this is obviously an improvement for TFC. It's just the price you had to give up and what that means for the future is a lot. Now, first off, and I think the important part of the storyline is Mark-Anthony Kaye was a Toronto FC Academy prospect. He was in the Toronto FC Academy, played back in 2014-2015 with TFC 3 in League 1 Ontario, TFC 2 in the USL. He was a TFC Academy guy. And then after the 2015 season, TFC decided that he just wasn't going to make it, so he went to play for Louisville in the USL, played 2 seasons there, improved, got signed by LAFC, and the rest is history. We all know he became one of the best central midfielders in MLS, one of the best central midfielders in Canada, was sold for about $1 million in allocation money from LAFC to Colorado back in 2020. And since then, of course, with his international success with the Canadian national team, the price has increased because on top of that $1 million, we've now had to throw in a bunch of sweeteners. So basically, we've had to pay all this money for a guy that we already had but didn't want to develop. And the issue, I think the big issue of that is that we give up Ralph Priso. Ralph Priso is a great young midfielder for TFC since he came onto the scene of Toronto FC in 2020. He has been a bright, shining light for the young kids and the academy kids, as he has just been a guy who was able to slot into the lineup seamlessly. And honestly, if it wasn't for a bad injury he got midway through the 2021 season, he probably would have been a key starter for Toronto FC this year. And now we send him to Colorado, and he is definitely going to be a very useful player for Colorado. His development is really just still building on, and he's going to become a great player. And my big concern is that in 3-4 years, Ralph Priso is going to be what Mark-Anthony Kaye is now. And so basically we've given up future Mark-Anthony Kaye for present Mark-Anthony Kaye, and that's always a scary situation to be in. Now, the $1 million in allocation money obviously is $1 million in allocation money. That throws away all the Pozuelo money plus a lot of the other allocation money TFC's built up throughout the course of the season and in the preseason. I know we added a bunch of allocation money back then, so all of a sudden now we have allocation money to add in a defender and shore up the back end. I'm not so sure anymore. I'm sure there's still some sitting around, but $1 million is a lot to pay. The other 2 pieces of the deal aren't that important. The SuperDraft pick, TFC doesn't really use the SuperDraft that much. Actually, correction, TFC isn't very good at the SuperDraft. We picked Griffin Dorsey above Tejan Buchanan a few years ago. So the super draft pick for TFC, I mean, can't mess up the super draft if you don't have your pick in the super draft. So, I mean, I'm not that upset about the super draft pick. And then the international roster spot next year, remember for this season, MLS added the rule that the 3 Canadian teams get 3 extra international roster spots to accommodate for the fact that it's easy for players to get US green cards, or relatively easier for it is for players to get US green cards and be considered domestic players in the US than it is for Canadian players to get citizenship in Canada and, you know, classify as domestic players for a Canadian team. So to compensate for that, Canadian teams get 3 extra international roster spots, so TFC gets to trade an international roster spot for next year, and we still have 2 more than any other American team. So it's like fine. I honestly don't see TFC wanting to use all 8+3 for 11 international roster spots, so having those 3 extras means that you can probably always trade 1 or 2 of them every year. It's just useful. So it's literally just a trade piece that is probably going to see being happen year after year after year of TFC trading an international roster spot from those extra 3. So that part I'm also not that concerned about. Honestly, the part that I'm most concerned about this deal is Priso. I think the Priso add-in is really a showing that this trade is 100% for right now and not for the future, and TFC is going for it right now. I mean, obviously with Insigne and Crescito and now Bernadeschi, he's 28, but that means his prime era is going to be right now for TFC. So this is a TFC team that is going for it right now, but there are problems in that of its own. I mean, remember, for this season right now, TFC is 7 points out of a playoff spot with 16 games remaining, and we already have found out now that Insigne is going to be missing at least the next 2 games because of his injury. We literally have no designated players at the moment for tonight's game against San Jose. Who knows what's going to happen next week if we're going to have a designated player by then. So we could be looking at a team that is 10 points out of the playoff spot with 14 games remaining by the time these DPs show up. So, for making the playoffs this season, that is a tough ask for this team. And honestly, I don't know if we're going to make the playoffs this season. And that's scary for a team that is making a lot of trades for right now. Next season is a whole different part of this equation. And what it's starting to seem like is TFC is making trades and moves this summer, mid-season in 2022, in preparation to contend for the 2023 season. That makes a lot more sense. Then we get a whole season of Insigne, we get a whole season of Bernadeschi, we get a whole season of whoever else we may add on for that 3rd designated player spot. Plus a full season of Mark-Anthony Kaye because he's signed on a, I think, 4-year deal from Colorado. So we have these guys for next season, and they're all going to be ready to go, and we're not going to be having this mid-season turnover next season. So this all could very much be a build-up to contend next season. However, that is a hard sell when you're making these moves mid-season, and obviously these guys want to contend all right now. So this season is going to be very, very weird. I mean, this end of the season is going to be very, very weird for TFC because it's going to be a very strong team once they get all these transfers figured out, with not that many games left to go, fighting to get into the playoffs. And even if we do get into the playoffs, it's unlikely that we'll even end up getting a home game based off of where we are in the standings right now. So that just makes everything really weird for TFC going forward. If the team is as good as it could be, if we get into the playoffs, anything can happen. Just the fact that we won't have a home game likely makes it a little sad, or just not as exciting as it could be if we had home games running through to the final. But as of right now, TFC is in a really weird place in the standings to be a true contender this season. So again, a lot of really interesting things going on this season, and so it's going to be very intriguing to watch how this back half of the season plays out for TFC. I mean, they may end up going on a big run and making the playoffs. I mean, it happened before. I mean, in 2019, we didn't start really being a consistent playing team until mid-July, and then we went basically undefeated for the last half of the season and ended up going all the way to MLS Cup undefeated from July. So that is still very much possible as a type of play that could happen, and it seems that that's kind of the inspiration for this TFC run, is that 2019 team, which did have some pieces come in, and then really in the summer things just clicked and they went forward. So again, can a team fully rebuild or fully retool halfway through an MLS MLS season and then make the playoffs. It's going to be really interesting to see. But yeah, if Bernardeschi is coming with Kaye in the midfield now, the forwards are shored up, the midfield's shored up, Quentin Westberg's fine in net, just the back end, 1 or 2 additions back there, and TFC is basically built to fly in MLS. This team already is a lot better, or should be a lot better than it was on paper in the first half of the season. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this back half of the season plays out. Mark-Anthony Kaye, just what he's going to add to the midfield. Osorio, Kaye, Bradley midfield, that is going to be great, and especially Kaye and Osorio with their ability in the midfield are actually going to be able to shore up and let Michael Bradley be more of his CDM and not have to worry about pushing forward as much. He'll be able to step back more. His speed, or lack of speed, mind you, will be able to be insulated against more with forward midfield of Kaye and Osorio, or pairings in midfield of Kaye and Osorio in front of him. So really, it insulates Bradley. Mark-Anthony Kaye just is a fantastic addition, all around fantastic central midfielder. Him and Osorio together, oh boy, we see what that happens for the Canadian national team. So it's a fantastic move right now. Mark-Anthony Kaye is a fantastic player, one of the best midfielders you can get in MLS. So this is obviously a move that's making TFC better, but as I said in my last video earlier this week, the Pozuelo trade, is it too little, too late? So that is it for this video. As always, if you like to hit like, if you want to see more of my stuff, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, link is down below in the description, and I will see you next time.